Hello, a very good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning in again to another episode of Streaming School. As you can hear by the music playing in the background, that means our good friend Action Jackson is up, alive, kicking and ready. A very good morning to you, Action. How are you, buddy?
I am doing very well, thank you. It's a great pleasure to be back here at Streaming School.
Yeah, it's great to have you as ever, man. It's great to have you as ever. With all the messages, obviously, you're getting and helping people. What are you finding people are saying is most difficult, like throughout the lockdown, throughout this period? What kind of advice are you giving out most, do you think?
A lot of people are complaining about boredom. Definitely, they're bored. So, which is where I then say to them, it's time for you to reinvent yourself. So it's the time for you to look at your bad habits and say, you know what, over the lockdown, I'm going to recreate myself. So that's one thing I always give. Three things I actually say to them. I say, number one, you need to rest, and I think they've done a lot of that. Number two is to reinvent yourself, and number three is to reach out to people. Imagine if you send videos to all your friends or voice notes to those you've never reached out to in a while.
That's 100%. Like that's actually one of the habits when I used to do really long car journeys before this. Like that was my thing. Like I always used to guilt people like, it's me calling you again. And they'd be like, oh, it's so good to hear from you. I was like, I'm just killing time on a journey. But it always made people feel that way. All right, buddy, the floor is yours, as they say. Thank you very much for joining us again. Really looking forward to hearing you today.
Wonderful stuff. Well, good morning. This is Action Jackson, UK Ambassador for Happiness. I am the energizer, along with the rest of the team here at Streaming School, to motivate you, to make you feel good about yourself. I've been doing this now for 20 years as a motivational speaker. And my dream was always to become an actor. I'm a bit of a performer, and I love that. And I embrace that about me because I know that I am a gift to the world, and so are you. And that's part of what we're going to be talking about today. So very quickly, I always start off with the foundation, which is thoughts affect emotions, emotions affect actions, and actions affect results. Now, you might have heard the music in the background, and part of the music is to change the way you're thinking right now. And I've got my phrase that says, I am amazing. That's the foundation. It's like oxygen. Now, you might be thinking, is he about to dance? I'll just semi-dance. So here's the move I want you to do today. Dance with me. Just dance. And the phrase is, I am amazing. You've got to say it. Say, I am amazing. Wherever you're watching right now, say, I am amazing. Feel it. I am amazing. Oh yeah, I am amazing. Now, I never get tired of saying that. Because you know what? There are times where you don't feel amazing. There are times when you wake up, maybe on a day like this, you wake up and you look outside your window. I don't know where you're watching right now, but outside it's raining. I'm looking at my bins out there. The foxes have attacked my bin. And I'm like, oh, I got work to do today. Now, you might feel a bit, Here's what I want you to switch your mindset to. Watch this. You are here to be a problem solver. See, if you're a problem solver and you have that mentality, it makes you feel different about yourself. You're not a problem. You're here to solve a problem. Here on earth. That's why you're here at Streaming School. We want to unlock the best of who you are, then send you into the world to go and solve problems. Right now, the world has tons of problems. Where does happiness really come from? Well, happiness comes from a cross-section between problem and solution. Where problem meets solution, boom, guess what we've got? We've got happiness. Right now, we've got the lockdown. What is the solution to the lockdown? Streaming School. That's one way of educating you. You see that? Happiness when it comes to your education. So I want you to begin to start thinking about yourself as a problem solver. You've got to put your hand in your heart and say, I am here to be a problem solver. That's who you are. That's definitely who you are. Now, you might not feel like a problem solver. Whether sending a message to granny or grandpa or auntie, you're solving a problem. Whether cleaning a house, you're solving a problem. Find a problem today and solve it. Become a solution seeker for the problems you see around you, because solution seekers are valuable to the world. That's why I keep saying that you're amazing. You have to be different. Definitely. Don't try and be like anybody else, please. Me, I'm not the same as anybody else. I'm different. I'm an entertainer, a performer, an educator. I find a different way of educating people. People look at me and say, oh, who does he think he is? No, 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 no. I don't think I'm amazing. I know I'm amazing. I want you to have that same mentality. So I've gathered some quotes that might actually help you to get into that mind frame. Because many of you, you might doubt yourself sometimes. I don't want you to do that. I want you to start seeing yourself as a problem solver. So the first quote says, stop comparing yourself to other people. You're supposed to be unique. Stop comparing yourself to other people. You are supposed to be unique. The next quote says, what sets you apart can sometimes feel like a burden, and it's not. And a lot of the time, it's what makes you great. The thing that sets you apart is what makes you great. Maybe you love reading. Maybe you're obsessed with numbers. Maybe you're obsessed with cooking. Whatever is your obsession is your gift to the world. Your obsession and what makes you different is what makes you a solution provider to the world. So stop comparing yourself to others. Next quote says, in order to be irreplaceable, one must always be different. You see, once again, difference is good. Many people don't like their difference. Many people cringe at their difference. No, you're supposed to be different. That's why you're amazing. Next one, I love this one of my favorites. To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. It is a fight to be yourself. Sometimes I put out a video and I'm thinking, are you mad? Did you just do that video? I said, yeah, because I am me. What makes you different? I want you to start thinking about it. What makes you unique? See, whatever makes you unique, no one else has. Now, immediately, you might feel weird because of that. Don't feel weird. Celebrate your weirdness. Celebrate your weirdness, because your quote-unquote weirdness could be a solution to the world. I know many people who are obsessed with coloring in, and some people are obsessed with buildings. They're the ones that are going to create something great in the future. You're going to create something great for the future. So, to finish off, here's what we're going to start doing. I want you to start internalizing what I'm saying. Next time you say this phrase, I am amazing, own it. I've now given you permission to be weird. I've now given you permission to be crazy. I am amazing. Feel the energy. Oh, yes. I am amazing. Here at Streaming School, we are different. I am amazing. I'm watching you now. I'm watching you now. I am amazing. Whatever you do today, please, please, please be different, because that's what's going to change the world. Over to you, Leah.
Thank you so much, Action. Really, really appreciate it, buddy. What does the rest of the day find you doing?
Well, some more live streaming and reflection today. I want to dig deeper into my difference to kind of help some other people tap into their difference today.
And who do you look to for inspiration, Jackson? Obviously, we know you're high and happy all the time, but who do you look to for inspiration? Who would you recommend that people actually, if they want to keep positive or they want to get good advice, who do you think they should follow and listen to?
I look at people who are doing great, because musicians inspire me, because when they sing and they put out music, I love the stuff that they put out, So I look at people like Oprah Winfrey. That actually helps me to stay inspired. So these are some of the people that I like, and family members as well. They inspire me.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, look, have a great day, buddy. Really look forward to catching up with you a little later on.
Thank you very much. Have a great day, sir.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
I'm very lucky to have Action giving us those inspirational bits every single morning. And if you've missed anything, then please do go back to the Facebook or the YouTube page to find everything else that's available on there. And also you can go to our own website, which is the Free Streaming School. And the link is there on the homepage, to where we've actually categorized all the other different items as well. Now, Matthew Murphy, who is our resident media studies teacher, has kindly put together another video for us, which I'm going to introduce to you now. I think this one is going to be on active and passive audiences, and Matt's taken time to record this for us, to share it with us, and I hope it's going to be of great use to you. So that will be coming up on your screen right now.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another streaming school for GCSE and BTEC Media Studies. My name is Matt Murphy, and I'd like to welcome you to this stream today on Tuesday. if you've been following any of the other videos that I've done for media studies, you'll know that we've been talking a lot about audiences recently. And as I always say, the previous videos that I've put up on Streaming School will dovetail really nicely with what we're doing today. So if you aren't familiar with any of the audience vocabulary that we're going to be using and improving upon today, please go away and find some time to watch them as well. It might be useful to have maybe something to write with and something to write upon for this video, just to make notes to help with your with getting the terminology that we're going to talk about today into long-term memory. Excuse me. So without further ado, let me get into the content of today's lesson. So I want you to have a look at what's there on the screen. And today's lesson is going to be a little bit about imagining that the media is in some way like that graphic on the screen, where the media can somehow inject information directly into the minds of the audience. Obviously not literally, this is a metaphor for a type of media theory. So what that's referred to is something called the hypodermic needle theory. And the hypodermic needle goes something like this, in that imagine that the media, media texts, TV, newspapers, films, games, etc., are effectively like a hypodermic needle, in that they can inject information or values or ideas or morals directly into the minds of the audience. So I want you to reflect for 10 seconds or so and just tell me whether you think that this is true or false. So the news is that it's up to you whether it's true or false. This is effectively a theory, and some people believe it to be true and can present evidence for its validity, and others are vehemently opposed to the fact that it's got any part in reality, and can produce evidence for their point of view as well. Rather than me present my own opinions on it, I'm going to let you decide for yourself, like any good teacher would do. Excuse me. So effectively, with the hypodermic needle theory of audiences, opinions and values and etc., thoughts and feelings can be directly injected, metaphorically speaking, into the minds of the audience. It assumes, however, that the audience is passive. And on the screen there, you'll see that I've put passive in capital letters, because that is the crucial takeaway from today's lesson. We're going to be talking about what it means to be a passive audience and what a passive audience is. And simply put, if you assume that a media audience is passive, it means that they're simply absorbing the information. They're absorbing the opinions, the values, etc., and they're simply told what to believe. The audience accepts it on an entirely realistic way. So in an entirely passive way, I should say. That's a better way of putting it. So you might be sitting there thinking, yeah, I can see that this has got some truth to it. Or you might, on the other hand, be sitting there thinking, this is complete balderdash, Matt. I don't believe any of this. It is effectively one particular model of how audiences behave. The idea of there being a passive audience is one of the possible models that you can use when you're thinking about how an audience interacts with a media text in a passive way, absorbing the information, the values, etc., and they are simply told, they simply believe it because it's in the media. So there's another couple of graphics that put it in a different way. You can see that there's somebody who's being spoon-fed, literally, information, values, etc., via the media. Another way to put it would be that in some ways the media can brainwash you as an audience, or can brainwash the audience. Again, that depends on the way that you consider the human mind to work, if you think that's even possible. Again, an entirely different way of putting it. I didn't make this graphic, but I just thought that it summed up the hypodermic needle theory quite effectively. In that, if you believe that the hypodermic needle theory has some validity to it, you would assume that the audience simply says to themselves that the media said it, therefore it must be true. Again, it assumes that the audience is entirely passive, in that they simply just soak up and absorb the information, the messages, whatever they are, from the media, from various media texts. And this goes across every single media text, be it games, films, books, you name it. So, to sum up, passive audience is more likely to accept the messages in a media text without challenging it, and therefore more likely to be directly affected by the messages. So, is it that some products have passive audiences and others don't? Absolutely not. It depends entirely upon the audience participant themselves, whether they choose to be passive or otherwise. And we'll come to the otherwise in a moment. It's not that you, as a media creator, can decide for the audience. The audience has to make up its own mind. However, there are some products, as we'll see throughout this lesson, that take some steps and use some techniques to make audiences more passive or otherwise. So you might already be slightly ahead of me in that you've worked out that the opposite word from passive would be active. Yep. So the other vocabulary that we're going to explore today is what it means to be an active audience. So in the same way that a passive audience simply accepts the messages in the media text, doesn't challenge them, and is directly affected by the messages, an active audience engages, interprets, and responds to a media text in different ways, and is capable of challenging the ideas encoded in it. So the crucial words, phrases to pull out of that paragraph out of that sentence are engages, interprets, and challenges. The idea of challenging the messages that are in a media text are crucial to being an active audience, because if we go back to our stickman, that stickman is not challenging in any way the information, the values, the messages that are being delivered by the media. He's saying to himself, the media said it, therefore it must be true. And that is the definition of a passive audience, whereas an active audience engages, interprets, and responds to a media text and is capable of challenging the ideas encoded in it. So, there are three ways that an active audience can interact in this way. One way is considered what we call the preferred reading. So, the audience is actively engaged and challenging and responding to the media text, but they do it in the way that the media producers want them to. So if you've ever voted in a TV show where the audience gets to decide the winner, that is you engaging in an active way, using the terminology for today's lessons. You are engaging in an active way, but it is the preferred way that the media producer, the maker of that text, would like you to interact. Another one that I personally have done when Match of the Day 2 was still on TV, every month or so they would have the goal of the week competition, and you could go onto social media and you could vote for what you consider to be the goal of the week. That would be me engaging with the media text of the day 2, but in a preferred reading way. The makers of Match of the Day 2 made it so that I could go onto Twitter and I could use their way of voting for my favorite goal, and then if enough, the one that got the most votes would then be considered to be the goal of the week. So similar to other kind of voting things in other TV shows, like you can see on this slide here. So one way to be an active audience is to engage in the preferred reading of the text, that you engage in the way that they want. So the second way that an audience can respond in an active way is by what's called a negotiated reading, where the audience responds by accepting or rejecting certain elements of the text. So perhaps by voting for the underdog in a talent competition or questioning the program via social media platforms. In it's kind of a halfway between the hypodermic needle theory, where the message is simply going straight in with no thought or any kind of rejecting of ideas. There is some kind of halfway reading of the text. Maybe not accepting all of the values simply because they're in the media, therefore it must be true. And the third and final way that an active audience can be considered is what's called an oppositional reading. And this is when an audience understands what the preferred meaning is, but through an act of will, they choose to do the opposite. So, for instance, there was a campaign a few years back where I believe the band Rage Against the Machine got to be Christmas #1 simply because people took it upon themselves to not vote for one of Simon Cowell's winners of various TV shows to become the Christmas #1. It was assumed that every time that Simon Cowell has a winner of a TV show, that they immediately become #1. So people took it upon themselves to deliberately make that not happen by voting for going out and buying a different piece of music. And that would be considered to be an oppositional reading, in that people using their free will are then choosing to go against what the media text, in this case, I can't remember if it was X Factor or Britain's Got Talent or something like that, what they particularly wanted to happen to become Christmas #1. Again, as I was saying before, you as the maker of that text are not necessarily in charge of how the audience will read that. If the audience decides to be an active audience, in that they don't just blindly accept everything, the messages and the values that are there, you don't know whether they will you have a preferred reading, a negotiated reading, or an oppositional reading. Any of those three are entirely possible, and one particular audience member may jump between different types of reading, as you'll see hopefully in the examples that we're going to look at in just a second. So we've gone through what a passive audience is, how to consider what a passive audience is, and what terminology is around that. And we've looked at the terminology and the ideas around an active audience. So hopefully those two terms, active and passive audiences, are beginning to be crystallized in your mind. And hopefully you can begin to comprehend and use the ideas of preferred readings, negotiated readings, and oppositional readings. Think about your own media usage, and are there any instances where you yourself have had an oppositional reading to a media text, where you knew exactly what the media producer wanted you to do, but you deliberately did the opposite? So, an active audience engages, interprets, and responds to a text in different ways, and is capable of challenging the ideas encoded in it. So, let's look at some examples. So, I want you to think, when you go onto YouTube, are you being a passive audience, or are you being an active audience? Does that particular media platform encourage being a passive audience or being an active audience, or elements of both? Take a minute, take 10 seconds to think about that. Bearing in mind that the key words that we talked about when we were thinking about active audiences were that the audience engages, they respond, and they challenge. Now, you only have to think about some of the comment sections that you've seen on some of your favorite YouTube videos, that there's definite engagement, there's definite response, and there can be definite challenge. So the very nature of the YouTube platform encourages the audience to be an active participant, to actively watch. Sorry, to be an active audience, if you like. Sorry, I don't want to confuse matters. Because they engage, they respond, and they challenge, sometimes oppositionally. I'm sure you can think of multiple instances where you've come across very oppositional readings of media texts on YouTube. So if we take a different media text, in this case, the Sunday Times, so it looks and works in a different way from YouTube, would you consider that that has elements of active audience or passive audience, or combinations of both? Take 10 seconds to think about it. engages, responds, challenges. It's much more difficult to do that, I would say, with printed material. Engage, yes, you can engage, you can read it or not, but respond and challenge is not, it's not built in, if you like, to the media text in the way that it is on a YouTube video. Some particular media products deliberately make you engage even when you haven't. For instance, if we've ever had any notifications from games or other apps on our phones or on our devices, then that's a specific call to action for us to engage and respond with that particular media text. There are specific times when the makers of the text will try to provoke a response and an engagement with notifications, simply like this. You haven't been on Fortnite for 2 days, we'll send you this, in a hope to then make you an active audience. Because if you were a passive audience for Fortnite, you would simply wait until until Fortnite made it inescapable for you to play it. Whereas with these kind of notifications, it's then making you more of an active participant. Okay, so our time is very nearly up, so I just want to recap, making sure that you've got some takeaways from today's lesson and that you understand what the task is going to be for you to deepen and embed this understanding and knowledge more deeply. So to recap, at the top of the screen there, we've got the definition of the active audience. The active audience engages, interprets and responds to a media text in different ways and is capable of challenging the ideas encoded in it. And the bottom of the screen there, you've got the graphic which explains the hypodermic needle theory. The hypodermic needle theory being that a passive audience simply accepts the opinions, the values, and the messages from a media text without any further thought, simply soaks it up like a sponge, or being spoon-fed like we saw in that graphic. So, taking this learning forwards is what we need to think about. Love Island is an extraordinarily popular media text, I'm sure you'd agree. It does some things in order to make its audience more active, and I've included in the resources for this lesson some background reading so that you can look at exactly how they do that, because it's an extremely good case study for how to take an audience and to make it more active. I could do a whole 20-minute lesson just about how they do it, but I won't do that right now. But there is some background reading accompanied with the accompanying material for this lesson. If you want to learn more about it, please feel free to. You may have also seen newspaper headlines like this, where do violent video games make teenagers more aggressive? And again, depending on people's opinions, some say yes, some say no. It depends on your interpretation of whether you think that the hypodermic needle theory is realistic or not, or is true to life. If you don't think that teenagers passively accept the messages and the information which is in, say, violent video games, then you won't think that it makes them more aggressive. If you think that it's possible to have an oppositional reading to the messages and the violence that's in video games, then it's going to mean that your opinion on that question is going to be different. And that's one of the tasks which you can see. When my presentation's finished, there will be some tasks up on the screen that are going to allow you to not only answer that question that you can see on the screen, but also to test yourself using some of the BBC resources on the vocabulary and the knowledge and the information and the skills that we've been talking about in these last 2 weeks, all about audiences. So I want to thank you for your time again today, and I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you again soon.
And that is where I nearly forgot to stop the stream. So thank you very, very much for tuning in for the first media lessons. And the next lesson that we have on today is going to be PE. And then we have a science lesson, and then we have Spanish. So you've got a full packed day for you ahead of you today. I really look forward to taking you through some of those. And remember, if you missed anything today or some of the items that Matt was talking about from previous videos, you can find them on the YouTube, Facebook, Twitch pages, etc., etc., etc. Have a great day. I'll see you in 20 minutes.